I know many of you have met or interacted with Simone Cipriani before, as well as DolmaKyap. They're each going to give a short presentation about the different ways they're working in some of the communities that are the hardest to reach in the entire world. Simone works with migrants, he works with refugees, he builds social enterprises across Asia and Africa. DK is building an incredible business in Western China. So we're really excited to be able to share their stories with you. I know both of them traveled a long way to get here. And then they're both going to give their presentations, and then we'll have a few moderated questions from Amy Caslow, who's a wonderful journalist doing a lot of work in different refugee and hard-to-reach places. She's a photographer, she's a journalist, she cares deeply about this work, so we're excited to have her here as well. Thank you.
Hey, DK, after you, my friend. Thank you. Please, you go there.
So our growing passion for things handmade from very far away places means real profits for the chic boutiques, the big box stores, online sales. As Gina said, I'm a long-time, 30 years plus journalist in the field, chronicling economic development around the world. And I've seen some of the more promising pockets of growth in remote areas, such as the mountains of Guatemala, where a cooperative rug hookers crafting brilliantly colored pieces with strips of Salvation Army clothing handouts reaped enough products from overseas sales to bring fresh water to 5 families. For Rwandans, the creative economy has become an important indicator of the country's growth, which has been East Africa's success story for a number of years. Indeed, the government determined that weaving, beading, painting are critical income streams, social stabilizers, supportive occupations for Rwandans, where virtually everyone under the age of 25 is a genocide survivor. In Uzbekistan, the government is practically giddy with the success of its ceramicists, embroiderers, metalsmithers, ikat designers, silk rug artists, and they have built a robust system to support this with tax breaks, new schools, housing for artists, and training. The Minister of Culture puts folk art at 5% of GDP, 5% contributor to GDP. So here to share some really remarkable experience are 2 men with big stakes in the artisan economy. Simone Cipriani, who's the founder of the Ethical Fashion Initiative, with whom I sparred, I think this time last year, was it 2? Yeah, very spirited, as we shall soon see. And DK, who is the founder of Champtsee, a Tibetan handicraft initiative. And you've been in India, you've been all over, and yes, you've returned to Tibet. Yeah. So we have a lot to discuss. What we're going to first have are a couple of statements, and if they get too ornery, we're going to smack them back into place. But we're going to start. We're going to start with Simone, and if Simone, I just want to ask you, just there's so much data crunching now, or attempted data crunching on the impact of the creative, the artisan economy. In your view, with or without the data, as a man in the field, a man who works just about every angle of this, is there an expedient, a respectful way to help marginalized communities that would not otherwise have access to potable water, enough protein, education, healthcare? Is there a way, and are you doing it, and have you seen it in practice, to do business on the ground, affect change in really profound but a measurable way?
That's way to do things in a measurable way, yeah. You have to measure what you do every time. What we lack in this wide world of people engaged for the artisans of the world is a culture of impact assessment. That should be the first thing you set up. When you work for the artisans, you have to be sure to measure the impact of what you do. And the impact is not only environmental impact, which is important, but it's social impact. What are the results of your work for people, how they impact, how they bring about change on the life of people. So it is possible to measure. It is a moral duty to do it. It's a way to check that you are effective. Not everybody does it, though. I see a lot of projects where this doesn't happen, and these projects are biased. I think artisans from marginalized communities are very creative for two reasons. One, because they are able to live in a very tough environment, an environment characterized by deprivation. The second one, they are able to survive the visits of all the projects that want to help artisans. You have to be creative to survive that, because you receive visits continuously. You receive people, designers, who want to do things with you, and then they pass you a tiny order, very difficult, which kills you in product development. Then you receive people who want to teach you about banking, bookkeeping, accounting, everything, and you have to learn everything, and in the meantime, you don't have to eat. So you have to be creative. A culture of impact assessment, I really love that you asked this question. A culture of, and we didn't prepare before. A culture of impact assessment allows you also to see what is the real result of these visits, of everything you do. It's the first thing every project should set up, along with a clear market dimension. So it's possible, but it's something that has to be done more and more.
And in your capacity abroad, how have you been on the ground seeing the mechanics of this? And you were going to give us a rather technical.
We started the Ethical Fashion Initiative in Islam. It was years ago. It was the slum of Korogocho. It's neighboring to a big dump site, the dump site of Dandora in Kenya, in Nairobi. In Korogocho, we started with a small cooperative of shoemakers, thanks to a guy who used to live there, a missionary, lay missionary, Gino. At the very beginning, we didn't know how to frame business with them. But what we saw, thanks to this man who took us there, was that we had to be sure to be impactful. Because this guy told us, you don't come here to waste my time and to waste the time of my people. You come here to bring about results. So we have to find a way to measure your results. And if you don't tell me how you measure your results, I don't want you here. So we were forced at the very beginning to set up an impact assessment system. In the place where I used to work in those days, which is an international organization, nobody had it. And when we started that, people were saying, yeah, but we have to do something. We have to call a university professor. We have to call this. We have to call that. We got a group of these people, and we asked them what is meaningful for you. And out of their answers, we framed an impact assessment system. Then we found the software. Then we found this. Then we found that. Then we found the experts to frame it. But it was based on what these people needed.
And what were the elements of meaningful?
It was food, availability of housing, access to sanitation, clean water, healthcare, education for kids, transport. All the people who work in the informal sector need to board a matatu, how we say in Kenya, an informal taxi to go to work, and telephone, live functions on a small telephone in Islam. In those days in Kenya, they were already exchanging money through telephones, M-Pesa, money in Swahili. That's how the system was and is called. You needed a small telephone, one of those small Nokias of the old days to survive. And if you didn't have credit for airtime, you were fucked. So these were the elements. We had to measure how these elements were available at the moment, baseline, and how much they were available after 1 year of work. We've been doing this since then. And we have a very good idea of the metrics of development in those communities. We've seen how the life of people changed. Then, Some of the women, because we mainly work with women with 98% in those days of our beneficiaries were women. And these women came and told us, listen, we also want to measure another thing which is important for us, but it's not a thing that you can quantify. We want to measure what's our role in society, because we see that since when we work with you, we have become the breadwinners of our families, and our position in our communities has changed. We're more powerful. How do we measure that? So we sat together and we started saying, listen, what do you have that before you didn't have? And we discovered, now we have current account. We didn't have it before, a bank account. We can own property. Before, we didn't have property. The property was of the man, the animals. Everything was of the man, not of ours. Now we have property. What about respect? Our children, our sons, speak to us in a different way because we are the breadwinners of the family. What does it mean for you that this son will become a decent man one day who will respect women? It was them to tell us. So we started adding a qualitative dimension to that in order to measure, not in order to have an idea of how things change.
It's very difficult. These are soft but critical areas. Very difficult to measure burgeoning respect for women.
Absolutely, it's difficult.
But critical. And we're going to come back to that. I also want to tap into this remarkable absorption rate, saturation rate in Africa of cellular phones. And I wanted to explore at some point on this panel, if we can, the impact of this technology on these very remote small sectors, because it's everything from obviously communication to finance. DK,
yes.
Could you just, there's something really beautiful. You said DK made a remarkably beautiful video with Aspen, and one of the things he said was, handmade gives us an opportunity to practice patience when we need perfection. I thought that was just stunning. And probably not to you, it's your way of life. It's not stunning, it's the way. Tell us how that works for you in what must be one obstacle after another.
I have quite a different story from the panel here today, and I think mainly it's the way I think is also very different, because I grew up in a very different cultural and environment, very different place, and so I was born in Tibet, and my family is nomad, and still my parents are still nomad, and they used to have about 100 yaks and 500, 600 sheep, and which they even they have today. The sheep they have, and they sold the yaks to create my company because I didn't have capital. And so when I was 18, Gina, maybe you could put the slides. So when I was 18, I went to India because I did do I have a little bit of time to tell the story?
Of course.
And you have these two.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So this is when I was 17, and there was an American woman who was outside my door, and that time I don't speak English. So I called in our house, and she took this picture in 1993, and her name is Louise Corner. She's a photographer in New York, and I'm going to meet her this time after, I don't know, 34 years now. Yeah, I called her yesterday, and
was she surprised?
Really surprised. And so really, as you can tell from the picture, the way of life is very different, because we live in a cashless way of life. When I was young, we never had to deal with money. So we have yaks and sheep and horse. For transportation, we use a horse, and a lot for clothing, housing, food, we use yak and sheep. So And then there's a beautiful environment, the grassland, and filled with a variety of flowers in the summer. And of course, in the winter, it's really, really harsh and difficult. But so we have this beautiful life that's completely away from modern world. And and then I did schooling when I was 9 to 17. And that imprinted, that gave me the curiosities to want to see the outside world, because we were taught so much about Karl Marx and what's their name? Sorry, the communist.
Yes, the communist heroes.
Yeah, the communist heroes. And so I was really curious to know the Europe and America. Really fascinated to meet people like with a beard, and we're really curious. Maybe they know something extremely special. So that curiosity really led me. Of course, there's other spiritual reasons. So that curiosity really made me leave my country, and I went to India and across the Everest Pass. I walked for 1 month. It was harsh. Recently, about a few weeks ago, I went to Kathmandu and come back. On the way, when I was crossing the Everest, I saw the area where I went when I was 18. And it's really very scary
Inhospitable.
to see
Would you do
where
it
I
again?
went through.
Would you do it again?
Maybe not. But no, now I know a smart way to go. But
Shortcut.
so really, I didn't know where I was going, but I made the journey, and went to India and spent 14 years. There's a Tibetan art center called the Norbolinka Institute, where I worked for 14 years, from sales to production to managing director. And I left the organization in 2011, and the institute was like a school for me, learning. I met people around the world. I traveled around the world. And so I left the job, and I focused more on spiritual and philosophical studies for 3 years. And then I realized I really should go back home and do something in home, because I can be a very useful person in there. So I came back in 2015, and so I see there's a big opportunity, because there's not much businesses happening in there. And most nomads, they don't really want to continue their way of life, the traditional way of life, because they see the modern comfort and technology, mobile phones and social media and things like that. People are really attempted to change their way of life, and I feel I have a very important role to play in this intersection. And of course, I want to preserve Tibetan village culture, because I feel that's a very, very special, because it's the relationship in the villages. Of course, they have a lot of problems and bad side, but the very core thing that bound and beauties their lifestyle is the idea of compassion. Really, it's so really the way that they think others more important than yourself, and a sense of service. These are
this is what Champtsee means, no?
Yes, Champtsee means compassion, and so.
So tell us how you're able. I mean, this is a really outside-inside approach. You went out and got this remarkable experience, and I'm assuming these are Tibetan products also.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you were in India as well. And so now you are inside out. Are you confident that you can secure this way of life, at least enough of it to make it feel like it's got integrity?
Then I went back, and I see many opportunities. There's because in the summer, there's so many Chinese tourists come to Tibet. For example, the tourism product, any gift items, has a massive market there. There's no tourist product creation there. That's a big market.
Do you hear that, everybody?
So designers, and if there's designers, I need people who help me for to create a tourist product. So the dairy, there's a local market, you know, the nomad, they have something really special. The dairy from the Tibetan Plateau milk is extremely special. Yogurt, cheese, these are, if we know how to do it properly, even the local towns and cities, they want to get the original. They know it's really good. But then if the middle people are completely money-oriented, then they dilute the quality, and then in the end, they lose everything, destroys everything. So to answer your question, there's a big opportunity to maintain their lifestyle, but we just need to know how to do it nicely. For example, in my family, few can be nomad, and you can do certain things, modernize, make it more comfortable. And few people work in handcraft, but still like make things like Tibetan clothes, which preserves you create something that preserves the culture. So there's a way I think you can make a circle and make money in the thing, but everything you do have a cultural and sustainability benefit to the preservation of the culture.
Tell us about what's happening. What do you see in Tibet now in terms of artisan enterprise really bubbling up?
I think that's a quite sad story, not much happening. I think that's also opportunity. So there's can be other people who can do the job. For example, the Tibetan traditional housing is a yak tent in the summer. That's a big opportunity. I think companies, there can be 1,000 companies who can do that because the tourism is massive in the summer. And the Chinese tourists, they want to experience authentic housing, not the cheap or bad tent that they create for the tourism. So we can change certain things, and I feel this we can make as a model. So
you're looking at a market that is very much there.
Basically,
you're not exporting these tents. We're not seeing people sleeping in yurts around.
I'm more interested what you can do something locally there, and then people can recreate. So then it's a local employment and local usage, and it's very good for the environment.
Yes, indeed. Time is of the essence, and I'm going to open this up because these two remarkable men need questions. They need to answer some questions. Anybody have anything offhand? Well, I'm going to keep asking then, if that's okay. So these pockets of economic growth, Simone, that I and all of us in this world have seen in terms of the creative economy. Your work in the field, do you see this as a trend? Do you see development transcending borders? Do you see it staying within locales and enhancing the cultural heritage? Do you see it all? What can you tell us about? You're on the ground. You're buzzing through as much. I'm sure as much business as you can.
It's a trend. In development, there are trends, like in fashion. The pineapple example of José this morning was very good. It happens in development. Every now and then you see some buzzword, and everybody speaks that buzzword. Now it's creative industries and culture. That's the buzzword of today. But all that said, there's also a reality behind this. And the reality is that we acknowledged eventually that without this approach based on culture and creativity, you cannot bring about development. Even mainstream business and the infrastructure, the business model we use and the business infrastructure we use is based on mainstream business because we build social enterprises that are trade companies, that are real companies with investors and all the rest. So even if you have that, and you must have it, because if you want to help the artisans, you have to help them to become a business, you have to find creative ways to put together the products, to put together traditions with the market, to offer products and to engage consumers into that. And that's the key point. Creativity is not to do something out of thin air which you only like, but something which is liked by people, something that allows you to have a dialogue with people. José had beautiful examples today. And it's the same in our work in the industry of fashion, in the lifestyle and so on. It's the same in your work. I see here a beautiful piece of traditional Tibet conjugated with the natural dye, which is not traditional of Tibet, which is indigo. But the two things together are wonderful. And the result is stunning. And yesterday, we brainstormed together on how to transform this into a coat. So creativity answers a need. The need to take your resources and to present them, to establish a dialogue with consumers. Then, as José said, you have to manage your fire.
But if you have, let's say you have that need well established. You have it very well established in Tibet. You have it in your various parts in the universe. Then there are things called governments and conflict zones and at-risk communities and militias and absence of rule of law and ellipsis. And in most of the areas many of us are operating, this is de rigueur. This is not, off the beaten path. This is really how we have to move through economies to see what kind of development. Are the governments, are the legal systems that you're operating in? I understand yours is very, very vexing. Help, hindrance, what are the trends? What are the trends you're seeing?
No, but you have problems everywhere. You have problems at the level of legal framework, problems in customs, you have problems everywhere. But the issue is, the more you work and the more you empower people, the more these people become responsible citizens, the more they participate in solving these problems, because problems can be solved from within. When you go to a place and you say, I solve all your problems, you're always wrong. We work in Afghanistan. There's a new wave of violence now. But one day, everybody has to be able to sit around the table, and this has to come from the Afghans who have to be empowered to do it. And this is the trend. So when Greg Milne, I think, said something interesting today, important, which is true. Artisans, small businesses are the building blocks of communities. So when you build a community, it's the community that changes the things. In Burkina Faso, we had a government until a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, which was not conductive. Then there was a revolution, people-led revolution, and the government changed, and the present framework is very conductive, and it's very favorable to business. The women who worked with us, our cooperatives in this revolution, they participated in the public gatherings, but then in the evening they went back to work because we had the big delivery to a Japanese customer. It was people-led, people-made. So we are just facilitators. We must also understand the thing that all these projects, all these big organizations, we are the people who really benefit out of the work of the artisans, because we pay ourselves beautiful salaries to work to help the artisans. It's the artisans, the communities who do the change, and we must facilitate that.
DK, we heard this morning that women are the anchor of every poor community in the world. I have long looked at women, their education, their economic integration, their workforce integration as a leading indicator of economic development, especially in emerging economies. What role do you see women and men, but women in particular, playing in economic development in Tibet and through your work?
Traditionally, I think Tibetan culture, of course, we respect the women, but of course, the women work much more harder than the men. But all the
Isn't that strange?
the difficult tasks, like if there's a problem of fight or securing the areas, then men do risk their life. So there's a deal there. And but I really want to create there's a good change happen in the company that we have, and we do everything equally. So like lunchtime, both men and women, they do the cooking at the same time and everything. So I think everything can be changed.
Subtle, but slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
in the back, we have
need
a
to
question.
start.
Sorry.
Can I jump in from the
Please.
gallery quickly? I know, Simone, you had been working on some slides, a presentation that you wanted to kind of share with the
No,
group
but
here.
it's late. Come on, no.
Just want to give you a chance.
I actually think it's quite important because of this idea of the social enterprise. How do you do it at the last mile?
And this gentleman in the back had a question
Yes.
when you're finished.
Do I answer? Do we
No,
put the
please,
question?
yeah, absolutely answer.
Social enterprise is the intermediary in between, let's put just one slide, but I have to go straight to the point. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Is it me who did it? You see? Always wrong.
Tell me when to stop.
Go down, go down, go down, go down, go down. No, go back, go back. Yeah. So, I'm a peripatetic presenter. I cannot stay seated. So you have the market. Without the market and consumers, you do nothing. Then you have the artisans here, organized in groups, cooperative self-help groups, individual businesses. What you want. You do capacity building here. Without capacity building, nothing happens. You do impact assessment. You work here to mobilize the market, to mobilize the designers, to mobilize the consumers, because you do impact assessment, so you know the true stories here. You convey these stories to consumers, and that's how you sell a product with a value. Because if you want to sell a product like a CMT, a cut, make, and trim, you are fucked. You will never sell anything in this market. They squeeze you and they kill you. Guys, I'm telling you. But there must be a way to do it, and the way is to have an intermediary here that is able to coordinate the work of the artisans and to coordinate the inputs of the market. So we create, wherever we work, a local enterprise, a social enterprise, which is owned by local people, usually by the artisan, and we mentor this social enterprise for some years. Now, go down. Go down, go down, go down, almost at the end. Down, 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 down. Go down, mamma mia, down, down. Right! Last. No. Down again, down again, down again, down again. Mamma mia, mamma mia, mamma mia, mamma mia, mamma mia. Hey, hey! Laugh. Stop it. So you start at the very beginning, you create the social enterprise, you have to incubate it. You create an enterprise. You need the managing director, a general manager, and you need a team of people, of artisans who work inside that. Then you need to be available to offer them support in business development, in communication traceability with consumers, in product development, and in capacity building. So it means that if you engage with a community of artisans, you have to have the possibility to invest in this. In our experience, CapEx and working capital investment, $300,000. If you don't have this money, you don't do it. More, on top of that, you need the money to do the capacity building, and you need the money to do all this, product development, communication, business development. If you don't have this money in your pockets, don't go to bother the artisans. You work 2-3 years until you reach $350,000 of sales, with the margin, a gross profit at 40%. Oof. This 40% gross profit is what allows you to pass to the second stage, where the social enterprise hires a product development manager. Done. So this goes there. You are still there to mentor, but the product development manager is the linking point in between the industry and the artisans. Without product development, made here by the artisans, for the artisans, you receive products that are not suitable for you. I've seen big fashion people. I hate all this delegations, they come. Oh, can you do me a skirt in silk in Western Africa, where there is no silk? You must be stupid. Where do you see the silk here around? But I need my so product development is key function. You stay 2 years more, 500,000 sales at 30% gross profit. At this moment here, you start talking, because at this moment you can absorb this. Your mentoring here, your co-management of this, I sit in the social enterprise here. My offices are inside the social enterprise here, not in the UN office in the field, in here, in the factory. At this moment, this business is a self-sustainable business and absorbs everything. But why is it self-sustainable? Last slide. One after this. Go down another. Hey, no, the pies. When you start in the first 2 stages, usually the cost of labor is this. It's very high. You work with artisans, you've got to pay people, you've got to pay living wage, everything, blah, 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 blah. But most of all, you have a mountain of inefficiencies, because productivity of labor is what it is. That's why you invest in capacity building, and you have to train people. You know it in Haiti. And you have to train people to work better and better and to be more productive. And you need the capex expenditure, because you need to invest in capital. If you don't have the stitching machines, how do you do it? General costs, materials. The profit margin, the gross margin, not the profit. The gross margin is here. It's very, very small when you start. But you are a project. You can support it. The majority of projects remain there. 90% of projects remain there. That's why they die, and they are not sustainable. You have to go here, where you squeeze this cost of labor to this, but you don't squeeze it by paying people less. You squeeze it by eliminating inefficiencies and allowing people to be more productive, to be well paid, but to be more productive.
Where in this, and I know you want to go one more, but where in this succession of slides is the local impact? Where is the economic impact for?
You want me to give you all the presentation? How can I do it? Mamma mia. Let's go here. Here back. The local impact is here. Since the very beginning, the stage 1, you measure impact here. All this network of suppliers work with the market through the social enterprise. So the social enterprise has to be sustainable, to be the trade interface with these people and to coordinate the work of these people. From here, you send here raw materials, credit, you organize their work, you do the quality control, you do the finishing of the work, and then you do the shipping. Let me show you how it looks. The plan of a social enterprise like this, it's a factory. We make bags here. This is in Kenya. Stitching, preparation, screen printing, cutting, mess area. We make bags for Vivienne Westwood, Stella McCartney, Mimco, United Arrows, a lot of brands. We make mountains of bags. We make all the components in communities. We make the decorations in communities. We make the inside part of the bag in communities. We make the handles in communities. We make the metal buckles and fittings in communities. Then they all come here and they are assembled together. Sometimes they are assembled directly in the community, which is to say that they are, we make everything here. Here you do the final assembly. But this final assembly is what creates value everywhere. If this is not sustainable, the 500,000 I showed before, hey, you forget the impact on those people here, because you will never bring work to them. That's the system in which the Italian fashion industry traditionally worked. Italian fashion industry traditionally worked like that. Now it's changed, it's another word, but it worked like that.
Let's bring DK in here. And does this look like anything remotely familiar to you?
In general, in principle, yes, and that's how it should work. But right now, in my area, I'm really focusing the local government is into tourism. So I'm really looking at the opportunities here and there and really give them direct supply. And I take advances from the government. So I'm really playing a different game in here, but I need to go.
But you see, you play a different thing, but you play well because you have found your market dimension. So the concept is the same. It's the way in which you articulate that which is different, but you are market-based. You know where your market is. You know what are your skills. You have a clear philosophy of intervention. You want to be sustainable. You do that. I think you do very well. And by doing well what you do, which you do, you have accumulated skills and products that tomorrow will allow you to do something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's take a question from the back, please.
No, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that too. My name is Nima. I'm a doctoral researcher in economic development and founder of Dress Abstract, where we employ refugees here in the United States to make handmade wearable art. Dress Abstract.
Dress Abstract. You're the essence of that right now.
We say wear your art on your sleeve. So, and I really appreciate on the onset how we talked about impact evaluation, having my original training with Esther Duflo and RCTs in East Africa, and looking at the subsistence level of impact evaluation, looking at transportation down to food, housing, and making sure that children are attending school. I found myself in my own funny space where when we talk about employing refugees, we talk about how they're here in the US. And we talk about our impact by how we're empowering these communities to be able to not only put their own kids through schools, but to be able to grow their own diaspora and make them more enabled members of their new homes, right? Essentially pursuing the American dream. So I know we talk a lot about some of these subsistence level impact factors, and we're starting to head toward these community factors and the ultimate outcomes we hope for. Are there any more downstream impact factors that you think might be helpful for an organization that is looking to gauge at a level above subsistence and looking at the community level and going further?
Of course, it's not only, it's not only about subsistence, it's about decent living, a decent life. It's about a decent life. You start from subsistence where you are in places where there is no subsistence level, where people live below that, so you have to reach that. And then you go beyond, well beyond, because the aim of every human being is to have what the philosophers used to call a flourishing life. And the flourishing life is not about a life on pure subsistence. That's the life of one day we should say the life of the animals. Now we don't say this anymore. And in the case of migrants and refugees in our countries, it's a moral duty, the one to create conditions for them to have access to that. We manage a migrant center in Bologna, in Italy. We have a mountain of migrants coming to Europe from Africa and so on. And what we offer them is a structured path of training on bag making and on garmenting. And some of these people have been hired by Italian companies. So these people now live a normal life, a decent life. And then you don't even need to measure, because they have a regular salary and they have access to all the functionings of a structured society. And that's the other point. When you are in a society with deprivation because of development problems and war and conflict and everything, you have to measure and so on. When you are in a society in which there is a structure to take care of people, education, healthcare, and everything, what you have to do is to put people into this structure. Or if they go back to their own countries, they go back with an idea about how a society can look. The real issue of migration is that you change a social system for another, a dysfunctional social system for another. And if you go back with the idea that your social system can be changed. Migration is a powerful way to change the world, in both senses.
Simone, that's beautiful. I want DK to give us the final word on this. This was a superb question, by the way. Really, really critical to what we're talking about here. Would you like to have the last word on this? Or any word at all?
So I think I want to thank everyone, especially Peggy and Katie and Gina, to invite me here. And it's lovely to be able to spend time with you all. And maybe I could show the last few slides where my home is. Beautiful. And this is my parents' house. It's a video actually. If you click. Oh, wow. It's okay. Yeah, the next slide. And that's the tent we made. And
it's out of wool. People don't know it.
Can we go back to that tent? Is it possible?
That's a monastery.
Wow.
so this one is the black part is the yak here, which I'm looking for a machine in Canada which can make the yarns so it can make faster. And and then there's cotton fabric, and in the old days there's no wooden floors. I put a wooden floor, and that's inside and decorated, and it's really, really comfortable and nice, beautiful, especially in the summer in the Tibetan Plateau. And inside the walls is felt, and wool felt, and so that's our loom, 1,000-year-old traditional Tibetan loom that made the clothes for lay people and also monks. And that's the meditation cushions I'm really interested to make. I want people to meditate more.
I think you should send them to the White House.
Thank you. So that's an English woman called Amanda. She taught us the natural dyeing, knitting, and spinning. And she spent about a month there in La Brown. And that's the workshop we are building. And so upstairs is the guest house, and downstairs is a workshop and office and a small gallery and a restaurant. And this is 1/4 of the space, and we have more space to, once we have more money, we could extend the space.
So the artists will live, work, produce.
And, but also people, because we slowly want to recruit people in the villages so they can go back and forth. And so it becomes much more solid. So their employment benefit. This is the area, actually. It's called Amcho. That's where the airport is.
DK, you brought us back to where we started, which is really local economic impact. And quite beautiful. I love the rainbow.
Thank you.
And how do you say thank you in Tibetan?
Guatenche.
It's beautiful.
Say that one more time.
Guatenche.
Guachinche.
Yeah, that's thank you.
Thank you all three so much. I'm going to invite Jill from Mela Artisans up, and Pedro, please come up here. We're going to go to lunch in 2 minutes, but we know that you all have questions, and we wanted to make sure that over lunch we planted a few seeds of questions that some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the creative economy are asking themselves about their businesses. You're going to hear more from them later, but we wanted them to come up here and ask their one big question that's in their heads to all of you, so that over lunch we can all be meeting each other and discussing it. When we come back, we're going to do 2 to 3 key insights from all of what's happening out there over lunch. But first, I'll finish the instruction in a minute, but first, over to both of you. You're going to hear way more from both of these folks later. But just what's the one big question you're asking yourself about your business that actually could relate to a lot of people in this room?
Sure. So one of the things when you're selling to rather large scale businesses in the United States in particular, and certainly in Europe and across the country, is that they are all looking for high quality goods, and yet the nature of handicraft goods is that they are one of a kind and unique and special in that own way. And yet there are many, many regulations or social compliance, quality control compliance that some of these larger businesses require you to participate in, which are quite costly and can truly cripple some of a lot of businesses trying to create scale. So it's how do we band together to create something that can satisfy what's required from these big businesses in terms of quality, and yet still let the unique nature of handicraft goods shine through.
And Pedro, come here. Come right up front and center. What's your one big question that you're asking?
Yes, I think it's relate. It is this relationship, this inequality relationship between the big brands and the ethical, the social brands that are involved with artisans. How can we stand up together to make something to reduce those inequalities?
Santi, I'm going away now. I have to leave. But can I say one thing on these two questions? Before I go away.
You still have your microphone on?
No, I have people here. Change your market. Change it now. Start changing your market immediately. You cannot work with the big businesses, big distribution business, with artisans that ask you these standards. They kill you. Get to niche market or get their CEO to engage with you and to get down the reporting line and instruction that says you work with these people and you find a way to solve the problems. Then the social enterprise I showed you is what we use to prepare people to comply with regulations and so on. Because this is a thing to do, but to a certain extent, regulations and things, you have to comply with them. And you have to organize your artisanal business to comply with them, otherwise you're not a business. But when you find the big distributor who tells you have this, blah, 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 and then all the payment, goodbye. You are going to suicide yourselves. How do we band together? We band together by selling together, by creating business together, and by respecting human rights. Because that's the bottom line. If you don't respect the human rights, you're not a business. Not an ethical business. You are not a business. Because business is not about robbing people. Business is about doing things for the wealth of people. And this means respecting human rights. Thank you.